It begins in silence. The clock ticks. The room is still. You lie in bed, drifting between dreams and darkness. But then, something changes. Your eyes snap open. You try to move, but you can't. Your chest tightens. The air grows heavy. And then you feel it. A presence. Ancient, malicious, watching. It climbs onto your chest, pressing down, draining the breath from your lungs. You want to scream, but no sound escapes. You are awake, yet not free. Trapped in your own body. This is not just a dream, not a trick of the mind. This is the Mare, a nightmare spirit from the heart of Norse mythology. Feared for centuries, whispered about in the dead of night, the Mare is more than a legend. She is terror incarnate, haunting the fragile space between sleep and waking. Tonight, we step into her domain, into the shadowed world of the Mara, where sleep is no longer safe, and your bed may become the place you fear most.
Sleep, so often a sanctuary, a place of healing, peace, and retreat from the waking world. Yet across centuries and civilizations, there has been an unshakable belief that sleep is also a time of great vulnerability, a moment when the body lies defenseless and the soul, if only for a moment, wanders beyond the veil. In the folklore of the Norse and Germanic peoples, this moment of stillness is not safe. It is dangerous. It is haunted. Whispers tell of a being that comes not with claws or fangs, but with silence, a female spirit known as the Mare or Mara. She does not knock, nor does she speak. She slips into the room unseen, settles onto the sleeper's chest and begins to press. The weight is unbearable. The breath is stolen. The body cannot move. And the mind, left suspended between dream and waking, spirals into terror. From this ancient terror, we inherit the very word nightmare. But in the old world, it was not just a bad dream. It was believed to be a visit, real, personal, and deeply feared. The Mare was not simply a myth told to scare children or explain night terrors. She was thought to be a very real entity, a wandering spirit, or perhaps the cursed soul of a woman who could no longer rest. She did not kill, but she tormented. She did not speak, but she suffocated. And to those who knew of her, she was not imagined. She was inevitable. Her legend speaks to something buried deep within us, the primal fear of being watched, of being trapped, of being helpless, the fear of the night itself. To understand the Mare is to explore the darker corners of sleep, where the mind cannot trust its senses, and the line between this world and another begins to blur. To understand the Mare, we must go far back, into the mists of the ancient world, when the boundaries between spirit and flesh, dream and death, were still fluid in the human imagination. The name Mare or Mara finds its roots in the Proto-Germanic word Maren, meaning incubus or oppressive spirit. It is a word steeped in dread. Across the Germanic-speaking world, it was known by many names: Mara, Mare, Mort, Mora, but always it was feared for the same reason. It came in the night, unbidden and unstoppable. In Norse mythology, the Mare is more than just a ghost. She is a force, a spectral entity, often envisioned as a female spirit cloaked in shadow, weightless yet heavy with malevolence. Her origins are elusive, tangled in layers of myth and folklore. Some believed she was the wandering soul of a woman who died with unresolved rage or sorrow. Others said she was a witch cursed to torment the living. And in still older tales, she is likened to an Olfa, a malicious elf or dark fairy twisted by envy and spite. The Mare does not knock, does not announce her presence. She rides the night winds like a phantom steed, traveling swiftly between worlds. She needs no invitation, no summoning ritual. She slips effortlessly through the smallest of spaces, a crack in the wall, the gap beneath a door, a keyhole barely the width of a pin. No home is safe, no bed untouched. And yet her goal is never death. The Mare does not kill. She inflicts a more insidious torment, Paralysis, dread, and psychological torment so intense, it leaves lingering fear even after waking. Her victims describe dreams that feel more real than reality, a pressure on the chest, a shadow in the room, a presence that watches, waits, and presses down. Ancient peoples didn't speak of the mare as metaphor, they spoke of her as fact. She was as real to them as disease or hunger. Her attacks were feared enough that entire rituals, amulets, and carvings were devoted to keeping her at bay. The mare was not a villain in a tale. She was an explanation, a terrifying one, for something that humans have struggled with since the dawn of sleep. The feeling of being trapped within your own body, unable to move, to scream, to wake. In every whisper of wind at the window, every creak in the floorboards at midnight, people once believed, she is here. The mare does not need a face to inspire fear. In fact, she has none, at least none that has ever been clearly seen, for she is not a creature of light, but of sensation, of suffocating silence, of dreadful presence. Those who have encountered her, if encounter can even describe the helpless horror of her visit, rarely describe what she looks like. Instead, they speak of what they felt. It begins in the dead of night, often during moments of emotional turmoil or physical exhaustion. A sleeper finds themselves abruptly awake, or so they think. Their eyes open, but their body remains frozen, as if nailed to the mattress. Panic rises, but no scream comes, no limb obeys. Then comes the weight, a crushing, invisible force upon the chest. It becomes harder and harder to breathe. The heart races, sweat beads on the forehead, and a shadow, amorphous and cold, presses down as though feeding on fear itself. There is no voice, no explanation, just terror, pure and primal. Some say the mare rides people as a rider mounts a steed, gripping the ribs, leaning in, drinking their energy and breath. And when the sun rises, those afflicted wake soaked in sweat, shaking and gasping, drained as though they had run for miles. But they have not moved. They have only survived the night. Her touch, it seems, is not limited to humans. In rural folk belief, the mare is also said to ride horses at night. Stables that were peaceful at dusk become places of restless stamping and wild eyes by dawn. The animals appear spooked, disturbed, and often their manes are found tangled into strange tight knots, known as marelocks or elf-locks. These were thought to be the residue of her ghostly grip, the evidence of her nocturnal ride. In other variations of the myth, the mare slips into dreams not only to torment, but to corrupt. She plants visions of dread, twisting hopes into horrors, turning familiar places into nightmarish landscapes of confusion and pain. But what truly defines the mare is her intimacy. She does not stalk from afar or howl in the woods. She finds you in your most private, unguarded state, alone, asleep, vulnerable. She does not kill. She does not leave marks. But she leaves something far worse, the certainty that you are not alone in the dark. To be visited by the mare is not simply to dream of fear. It is to become prey, to feel hunted, invaded, and subdued by an ancient force that lives not outside, but just beyond the thin curtain of the mind. And once you've met her, so you do not sleep the same way again. Say across continents, centuries, and belief systems, the stories remain eerily consistent. The names may differ, Mare, Mara, Alp, or Night Hag, but the experience? The experience is the same, deeply personal, and profoundly terrifying. It often begins in silence, a subtle shift in the air, a feeling, no, a certainty, that something is in the room. Victims report waking suddenly, their eyes wide open, fully aware of their surroundings. But something is wrong, terribly wrong. Their arms, their legs, even their tongue paralyzed, as if their body has betrayed them, locked in place by an unseen hand. Then comes the dread, heavy, suffocating, ancient. It creeps in, slow at first, like the pressure of a storm building in the lungs, then all at once crashes down. The weight. As though a boulder has been placed on the chest, crushing the breath from the ribs. Some say they can see her, others only feel her, a presence crouched over them, staring directly into their soul. For some, she is a vague, dark silhouette in the corner. For others, she appears in flashes, stringy hair, hollow eyes, limbs that bend the wrong way, a face far too close. And sometimes, she speaks. A whisper in an unfamiliar tongue, a scream so loud it should shatter glass, but no one else hears it. You try to cry out, to move, to resist, but your body remains as still as death, while your heart pounds like a drum summoning the end. Reality becomes a shifting mirage. The room appears normal, but isn't. The shadows move on their own. The familiar becomes threatening. Victims report hearing footsteps, scratching at the walls, their own name spoken from behind their ear. Some see loved ones enter the room, only to watch them transform into something wrong. And then suddenly it's over. You wake, really wake this time. The pressure vanishes, the paralysis breaks. You gasp, drenched in sweat, your pulse racing. Like a hunted animal, the room is still, empty, silent, but the feeling lingers. The terror does not leave with the dawn. You search for proof, a mark on the chest, a shift in the bedsheets, a sound on the monitor, but there is nothing. Nothing except the overwhelming certainty that what you just experienced was not just a dream. You are left shaken, isolated, wondering if sleep will ever feel safe again. And this perhaps is the mare's most devastating power, her ability to walk the razor-thin line between nightmare and waking, between hallucination and haunting. She does not simply torment the body, she warps the mind. You question your senses, you question reality, and above all you question whether she'll return the next night, or if she ever left at all. The Mare, Mare, Mora, Nachtmahr, Old Hag, she is not bound to the frozen soil of Norse lands. She rides the wind across cultures, continents and centuries. And wherever she goes, the stories remain hauntingly familiar. The names shift with language, but the experience, it echoes loud and unrelenting across the human experience. In Slavic folklore, she is known as Mora, a spirit or demon that enters a sleeping person's room through keyholes or cracks. She sits upon the chest, inducing horrific dreams. In some traditions, she is thought to be the soul of a living person projecting itself unknowingly in sleep, especially those with unresolved anger or grief. In Germanic lore, the Mare becomes the Alp or Nachtmahr, a malicious creature who not only causes nightmares but drinks blood and steals breath. Tales describe the Alp wearing a magical hat, the Tarnkappe, which grants invisibility. The German word Albtraum, meaning nightmare, literally translates to Alp's dream. Even today, the language bears her mark. In Scandinavian belief, the Mare isn't just a ghost, but sometimes a living person cursed to wander in spirit during sleep, unknowingly tormenting others. These cursed souls could be children, witches, or those born under certain omens. People would guard themselves by placing iron tools under their pillows, turning their pillows sideways, or sleeping with protective symbols carved into their bedposts. In Hungarian folklore, she is the Liderk, a demonic figure that causes sleep paralysis, often associated with sexual oppression or anxiety. In this tradition, she may also appear as a fiery orb, slipping into homes at night to sit on a victim's chest and whisper madness. Travel to the Caribbean, and you'll find the Old Hag. Victims describe waking in the dead of night, paralyzed, with a heavy, unseen force on their chest. This phenomenon is known in Jamaican culture as being hag-ridden. Remedies range from spiritual cleansing to the use of protective charms and rituals passed down through generations. In African spiritual traditions, especially among the Yoruba people, a similar experience is described, often attributed to malicious spirits or curses sent by enemies. These spirits are said to ride their victims, draining life force or punishing them for wrongdoing. In these cultures, spiritual protection, ancestor veneration and ritual offerings serve as shields against such nocturnal attacks. Even in Asian cultures, the spirit takes form. In Japan, sleep paralysis is called kanashibari, believed to be caused by vengeful spirits, ghosts, or curses. In Thailand, it's known as phai am, and in the Philippines, the phenomenon is referred to as bangungot, often linked to sudden unexplained deaths during sleep. And in the southern United States, the term witch riding or being ridden by the witch has long been used to describe sleep paralysis, passed down through African American folklore, blending spiritual traditions of the enslaved with the superstitions of their oppressors. These stories, though separated by oceans and languages, share core truths: the paralysis, the presence, the pressure, the fear. So what does this mean? Is the mare merely an archetype of the human psyche, a shared symbol of our vulnerability in sleep? Or is she something older, something primal and real, lurking just behind the veil of consciousness? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: the mare is not bound by myth. She is global, she is personal, and she is still with us. To encounter the mare is to awaken at the edge of helplessness, gasping beneath an invisible weight, caught between the world of dreams and waking death. And so for generations, people have sought ways to guard themselves against her, drawing on ancient traditions, folk wisdom, and supernatural belief. The signs of her presence were said to be unmistakable: a sudden nightmare that leaves the body drenched in sweat, a horse found the next morning with its mane tangled in tight, inexplicable knots, marelocks they called them, a feeling of exhaustion with no explanation. These were the marks of the Mara's visit, etched into the flesh of sleep itself. Protection against the mare took many forms, some simple, others steeped in magic. In the Old Norse world, sleeping with a knife beneath the pillow was thought to sever the spirit's access to your breath, cutting her off from her victim. Placing a broom upside down under the bed distracted her. Compelled by compulsion, she would be forced to count the bristles, never finishing before dawn. Juniper, St. John's wort and yarrow were commonly hung in bedrooms or burned before sleep. These herbs were believed to ward off malevolent spirits, their scents acting as shields against the dark. In more remote villages, parents would sew iron nails into the hems of their children's nightshirts, iron being one of the oldest defenses against otherworldly forces in Norse and Germanic myth. Doors and windows were protected too. Runes were carved into thresholds and lintels, invoking divine protection from gods like Thor, whose hammer could shatter spirits, or Freya, who offered blessings against death and misfortune. A rune known as the alges, symbol of protection and awakening, was often drawn above doorframes or near beds. But sometimes the answer was not in weaponry or wards, but in behavior. People believed that sleeping on one's back invited the mare. It left the chest open, unshielded. To sleep on your side or stomach was to make yourself less of a target, less of a mount for the demon. In some traditions, a bowl of salt placed near the bed was enough to disrupt her path, salt being sacred, a symbol of purity and the boundary between worlds. And always, always, a light was left burning, a single flame in the dark, flickering like hope, because the mare, it was said, could not survive the break of day. She fears the dawn, flees from the sun and recoils from warmth. These protective practices weren't just superstition, they were survival, desperate measures in a time when science could not explain what the soul endured at night. And even now in modern bedrooms with electric lights and carbon monoxide detectors, people still whisper of strange dreams, heavy shadows, and the crushing feeling of being watched in sleep. Perhaps the mare never left. Perhaps we just stopped believing in the things we should still fear. In our age of electric light and neurological scans, the mare has been reinterpreted, not banished. Modern science gives her a new face, a new name: sleep paralysis. It begins in the REM stage of sleep, when our minds are most active and our bodies most still. Normally we remain unaware of this process, but occasionally something misfires. We awaken, conscious but paralyzed, trapped in a liminal state between dreaming and reality. The body is frozen, the breath shallow, the room unfamiliar. In that vulnerable moment, the brain, still flooded with dream logic, creates terrifying hallucinations. People report dark shapes, shadows looming, and crushing pressure on the chest. Some feel watched. Others see the same figure over and over again, a woman crouched on their ribs feeding on fear. Neurologists assure us it is all in the brain, a misalignment, a chemical echo of REM intrusion, nothing more. And yet, across continents, across centuries, from isolated villages to modern cities, people describe the exact same thing, the same weight, the same paralysis, the same terror. Long before neuroscience existed, the Norse feared the Mare, Slavs feared the Mora, Germans feared the Alp, Haitians feared the Old Hag. How do cultures with no contact, no shared language, all describe the same nocturnal horror? Is the Mare simply a neurological glitch buried deep in the human psyche? Or is sleep paralysis a scientific disguise for something older, something primal? Carl Jung might have called her an archetype, a universal symbol born from our collective unconscious, a representation of the human fear of helplessness, of the unknown, of death that comes quietly in the night. But to those who have felt her, truly felt her, this explanation falls flat. They didn't experience a psychological metaphor. They were attacked, held down, watched, haunted. Maybe science has illuminated the path through the dark forest, but the shadows have not vanished. Perhaps the Mare is both, a product of mind and myth, a fear so old and so widespread, it carved itself into our biology, into our dreams. Or perhaps she is real, and we have simply grown too clever to call her by her name. Though the old Norse sagas have long faded into history, the Mare, this ancient terror of the night, has never truly left us. She has simply adapted, trading whispers in the dark for a spotlight on the stage, a smear of paint on canvas, a flicker on a screen. In literature, the Mare's essence can be found in the haunted soliloquies of Shakespeare, who wrote of night's black agents and terrors of the mind. In Goethe's Faust, she re-emerges as the Nachtmahr, the night demon that invades dreams. In modern horror, authors like Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft channel her dread through unseen forces, sleep-haunting specters, and the terror of paralysis. In visual art, her most iconic depiction may be found in Henry Fuseli's 1781 painting, The Nightmare. There she sits, a dark figure crouched upon a sleeping woman's chest, while a ghostly horse stares from behind the curtain. The painting is both beautiful and horrifying, capturing the essence of the Mare in one unforgettable image. In film and television, she appears again and again, sometimes named, sometimes not. Think of movies like The Babadook, The Witch, or Veronica, where sleep is a battleground and the mind is a fragile veil. In paranormal documentaries and ghost hunting shows, stories of the Old Hag or a shadow woman pressing on the chest are eerily common. In video games, she stalks the player's sleep in titles like The Evil Within, Alan Wake, or Little Nightmares, all games that explore sleep, fear, and vulnerability in surreal, shadow-drenched worlds. Even in music, the Mare finds a voice, from Nordic folk ballads to dark ambient tracks and heavy metal, that echo her name in screams and whispers. But why does she endure? Why does this figure, this ancient, invisible weight, continue to live in our imagination? Because the Mare is not just a myth. She is a symbol of helplessness, of the terror of losing control, of being watched, smothered or silenced when we are most defenseless. She is fear given form, one that bypasses logic and speaks to something older than language. The Mare has outlived the shamans and the runestones. She has crept from hearthside stories into pop culture and psychological studies alike. And as long as we sleep, as long as we dream, she will remain, watching, waiting, whispering through the cracks of modern life, reminding us that some fears are too ancient to die. The Nightmare lives on. Sleep is supposed to be our refuge, a place where the mind drifts, the body rests, and dreams carry us far from fear. But for some, sleep becomes a trap. A still room becomes a hunting ground, A quiet breath becomes a countdown, and the moment your body goes limp, something ancient stirs. The Mare, Mara, Moroi, Nachtmahr, whatever name you call her, she does not care. She slips through cracks, slides beneath doors, and waits until your eyes close. Science may call it sleep paralysis. Myth may call it a curse, but in that frozen moment of terror, labels mean nothing. What matters is the feeling, the weight, the presence. You'll know her not by sight, but by dread. So tonight, when darkness settles in and silence grows loud, pay attention to the corners, to the breath that catches, to the pressure that rises. And if you should feel something sitting on your chest, if your limbs won't move, if a shadow leans close, remember this. She's been here long before you, and she'll still be here long after the dream ends. Sleep well if you can.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.